Hello, my name is Yana Hrynko. I represented the National Museum of the History of Ukraine, the Second World War. And I'm grateful to be here with you and for this a chance to have Ukrainian voice. Okay, so I prepared a presentation for you. I want to understand. Okay, so I want to start my speech with a Ukrainian joke about the Russian historical manipulation. This sounds like a representative of Ukraine speaks at the United Nations. When Prince Oleg of Rus went to the bath in the river, the Russians stole his sword, which he had left on the river bank, and the Russian representative answered, but Russian didn't even exist then. That's exactly the point I wanted to make. So, history holds an important place in the political and cultural life of Russia. It serves the aims of the Russian imperialism. And I want to talk about the instruments and narratives that have been directed against Ukraine and then contributed the war and genocide. This will be 4 parts: denial of Ukraine, the Second World War and the victory in it, denial of Soviet crimes and the whitewashing of Stalin, and the imagery of the enemy. So, this is monument to Kiev Prince Yaroslav the Wise, Yaroslav Mudry, was installed in the city of Yaroslavl in Russia in 1993. Yes. And Russians claims that it was our Ukrainian prince who funded their city, but there are no sources to confirm this. This is the monument in the Moscow, dedicated to Kiev Prince Volodymyr Great. Putin officially opened this monument. Actually, it could be looks better. Sorry. Okay. Russia began building their identity. I have some problem with the presentation, sorry. Why it's a jump? 1 second, because... Can you help me? Why is jumping? Боже. I press. Okay. I need to back. Okay. Not so much. 7. Okay, thank you. Sorry. So Russia began building their identity on the Ukrainian history as early as the 8th century. And they trace the origins of their statehood to Kiev Rus, with the center in the Kiev and its princes. And this lies at the heart of the narrative about one people, supposedly meaning that Ukrainians are Russians. So from this comes the denial of the Ukrainian nation, and this all efforts directed toward the destruction of the Ukrainian state. Within this narrative paradigm, several manipulative messages are heard that contradicted each other. As you see, for example, they say Ukrainians never exist, and at the same time they are the same as Russians. Ukrainians and Russians are brotherly people. Ukrainians are an artificially created nation, like by Poles or Austrians, and Ukrainian was created by Lenin, and something like this. In Russia, there has never been a rethinking of the Soviet period of history. No decommunization has taken place. On the contrary, they condemn this process in the other countries. I have identified three of the most striking manipulations surrounding the Soviet history that played a role in the manipulation played the role in the militarization of the Russian society and support for the war. So this is the silence of the USSR role at the start of the World War II as the Hitler ally, the monopoly on the victory in this war, and deny the Soviet crimes. World War II is the most important national myth in Russia. However, the focus is mainly on the German-Soviet War of 1941-1945, which has its own name in the Russian historiography, like Great Patriotic War. In this way, the role of the Soviet Union in starting World War II in 1939 is silenced. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is portrayed as the forced measure and emphasis as the shift to the fact that Stalin never personally met the Hitler. The cult of the victory is the most important part of the story. According to the propaganda narratives, this victory overshadows all the bad that happened in the Soviet Union, including justified crimes. This is a current mission is to raise the Russian people morale for a new war under the slogan, "We can do it again." This narrative is also meant to glue together post-Soviet countries. Russian soldiers, for example, during the invasion have addressed to Ukrainians with the accusation about forgetting the great victory, the shared victory. Russia tries to monopolize the victory in the World War II, referring to the total losses to the USSR, not just Russian, and they claim the role of the main victor. In connection with this, the cult of self-sacrifice is also promoted, especially during the full-scale invasion to Ukraine. The slogan, "We can do it again," has become the ideological basis for the new war, and the cult of sacrifice justification for losses. Like in this war, they have big losses, but this is not the reason to stop them. They're proud of such a big losses. Stories such as the Holodomor and deportation, repression, destroyed the myth of the happy life of Ukrainians in the Soviet space. Therefore, Russian historiography and propaganda whitewashed the figure of the dictator Stalin, denying or minimizing his crimes, for example, the Holodomor. Unable to categorically deny this anymore, they have moved to a form of concealed denial through the construct of a shared tragedy, the pan-Soviet famine, including but they excluding the genocidal nature of the Holodomor against Ukrainians. So this is the picture of the monuments Stalin and Russia, also on the Ukrainian occupation territory. As for 2023, Russia has 110 monuments to Stalin, and of these, 95 were installed during the Putin's rule, with the pace of installation doubling after the annexion of the Crimea in 2014. Only 9% of the monuments have survived from the Soviet times. So yes, actually in the social media, Russians was not enjoy about this monument. They say Stalin looks ugly. And I want to notice that half of the new monuments were erected on the initiative of the local authorities, and at the unveiling speeches are made about Stalin's exceptional role in the victory in the World War II, and parallels are drawn with the current war, suggesting that Russia is fighting against Nazi again. And so, preparation for genocide, according to the Gregory Stanton theory, 10th stage of the genocide begins with the classification. The classification of the people is based on the commonly accepted concepts like race, ethnicity, nations. Then this group is given certain symbol for separates this group from other for future discrimination and elimination. In the Russian case, they label us, Ukrainian, as a Nazi. To create this image, the history of the organization of the Ukrainian nationalists, led by Stepan Bandera, is taken as a basis. The focus is on this organization contacts with the Nazi Germany in the 1939-1941 stage of the war, but ignoring the repression by Germany against the nationalists, including Bandera. For example, Germany arrested Bandera when after the organization declared the restoration of the Ukrainian state in June 1941. So the cooperation of some members with the Nazi is exaggerated and extrapolated to all Ukrainians who support the idea to have Ukrainian independent state. So this is why in the current Russian genocide program, this is called denazification, the image of Nazi or Banderovцы has been created. A detailed explanation of this strategy was outlined by a Russian political technologist Sergeytsev in 2022, after the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. He explained, a Nazi, this is a Ukrainian who refused to recognize himself as Russian. The declaration of Ukrainians' independence in 1991 is beginning of the Ukrainian Nazification. The goal of denazification is the destruction of the Banderovska Ukraine, what is mean to destruction of independent Ukraine. So he proposes dividing Ukrainians into two categories because in his belief all Ukrainians are Nazi. The first one, military personnel, their families, volunteers, public figures, political figures must be physically destroyed. And Russia is already implemented this on the occupied territories. We know about cases of when they took representatives of the authorities, military personnel, volunteers, culture and public figures, and these people have been tortured, imprisoned, and someone killed. Another people, this is people who work in the government service or government bodies in the field of the culture and in the education media, subject to the correcting these people, like in Soviet Union. That is, Sergeytsev proposes mass repression targeting 20 million people. The same is already being applied in the occupied territory. So my brother is the army officer, and I work in the culture area, as you know. So I don't know which category they put my family if Russia wins this war. And another part of this is program to replace Ukrainian identity with Russian. The following is planned. The installation of the Russian information space, the replacement of educational programs and materials with the Russian ones, and we are already seeing this process in the occupied territories. And for example, the most hard part that Ukrainian children, this is about 90,000, this is the number of names we know, who have been abducted are being raised as the Russian citizens. So the author of this article, Sergeytsev, notes that such measures can only be carried out by Russia because it is the main victor over Nazi, referring to the World War II. Sergeytsev article has not been condemned in Russia, but rather is considerate and ideological explanation of the war against Ukraine. So, for Russian politics, history is not memory, it's a weapon. Manipulation of memory has become the foundation for the aggression and is not stopped. It could become a tool for the destruction of the entire Ukrainian nation. What is I wanted to say, this is not just a war, this is genocide, actually. So thank you for your attention.